You have to get clarity. So whatever that is for you, write down a vision, make a board, something, but where are you going? It's like what you set the GPS for. So you want to go home. That's clarity. I think you have to build confidence in a new identity. I truly believe that whatever identity that you want to become doesn't happen when you have the thing or you're doing the thing. It shifts now, and then the result lags. And then you have to have the right community of people around you that will cultivate that.
This is the Fit Investor Podcast, where we talk about how to live a more holistic life of being fit, not only financially, but physically and faithfully. We'll be joined by experts in all these areas to share their experiences and actionable and practical tips so that you can be a fit investor too. So now let's join our hosts, Cale Delaney and Brenna Carls.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Fit Investor. I'm your host, Cale Delaney, and today we have a really special guest I'm excited about, Mr. Jamie Gruber, who is a father and husband, an expat, entrepreneur, multifamily investor, podcaster, and a mastermind creator. Formerly a high-paid executive for Progressive Insurance, Jamie took the midlife entrepreneurial leap and left the job to pursue a life on purpose. And now, as the leader of GoBundance Emerge and Ascend, he's helped grow over 40 millionaires and is living his best life in the Dominican Republic, while still growing his brand and the Tribe of Millionaires podcast to be a top media outlet for high-caliber guests like Grant Cardone, who we interviewed recently, and helping others make the midlife entrepreneurial leap. So I'm really excited to have you on. Again, appreciate you having the time to spend with us here on the Fit Investor. And again, welcome.
Thank you, man. When I hear all that, I'm like, man, I'm doing too much. I got to narrow.
No,
you got to focus more.
That's what I'm hoping to dive into a little bit too, is how are you doing so much and still maintaining some balance in the life there. But like I mentioned offline before we jumped on, yeah, I'm personally excited to have you on. I followed you for a bit and you'll actually probably enjoy this. So it's probably about a year and a half ago, I was at a Jake and Gino event, and towards the end of the event, they asked us, everybody, to write down 3 people that you would like to meet. And they were like, mate, don't think small, make it big, whoever it is that you'd like to meet in your life. And so the 3 people on my list were Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, and no joke, and Jamie Gruber.
Come on.
I'm serious. No,
that's ridiculous. You're aiming too low, man. Jesus.
I mean,
with the 2, you're not. Wow. I don't know how to react to that. That's insane.
No, I tell you why. Not only because we have a lot of parallels in our life and things like that. I think you're like 5 to 10 steps ahead of where I am, but we have a lot of similarities in a lot of ways. But also because you are like a proclaimed connector. And that's one of the things that you really enjoy and doing, and what you do in your podcast and your communities that you create. And yeah, so that's why I was like, man, it'd be great to meet Jamie. If there's anybody that could help fulfill my goals, that's probably the guy. So there we go. Here we are.
Who did you have to say that to? Was that in front of Jake and Gino or Gino, or no?
No, it was just a private thing. I'll just write it down.
I was going to say, Gino could have connected us at that point, but yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well, there we go. So yeah, I think most people in our audience probably know a bit about you and who you are. So we won't dive into the whole backstory and everything, but why don't we just start with the midlife entrepreneurial leap? I think that's a big theme and your story and your mission. And what were some of the big decisions that really got you to taking that leap? Because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, right? I'm sure you see it in your experiences. You can get that 99% to where you think, okay, I'm tired of this. I need to make a change. And then you get that 1% left that I think you would call it that like target lock moment, where that's where people stop. That 99% is easy, but that 1% is so hard. So I wanted to see, what were those kind of target lock moments for you, and what was it that helped you overcome that hurdle and really take that leap?
It's a great question. So I'll give you a couple steps along the way, for me at least, that I stumbled into and learned about. I think everybody, I've never met a person, I don't care how happy you are at your job or the business you're in or whatever, that hasn't dreamed a little bit about that thing, whatever that might be, being an entrepreneur, owning a business, buying real estate, whatever. So you could have a great job and you're pretty happy with it, but there's still, what if I just that thing? So the first thing I would say is in other words, I wanted to buy multifamily real estate. So I bought real estate, took a home equity line on my primary home to buy 2 duplexes with it. That was the down payment for the 2 duplexes. Bird them. It was fun. Lost money on it initially, or not lost, but I didn't do anywhere near as well as I projected to do. And then that led to, what about multifamily? So go the multifamily route and so on. So the first step, I think, is doing something. Most people don't. me included, because we fear that if we don't make the decision, the right decision, the first time, that they're going to be judged, they're going to fail, that things are going to go south. And I look at that as endemic to the way our lives are sliced up. Most of us go through 17 years of schooling, 13 years primary, and then 4 years of college, maybe more. And then you have a career that lasts, whatever, 8, 10, 12, 15, 20 years. So you got chunk. So now you're thinking about doing something different. And it's now I've got a mortgage, I've got kids, I've got all these complexities. The stakes are too high. So if I do something, it's got to be the thing. And what I learned by doing something is it's not usually the thing that somebody lands on at the end. Ed Milet, as an example, he just popped in my head. He was an MLM guy. Do you know Ed Milet to be an MLM guy today? Patrick Bet-David was an insurance guy. Gary Vee was a wine guy, right? Granted, they were probably entrepreneurs way early. They didn't have to make a leap midlife like I did. But the point is that where you start is not where you're going to end, but you have to start and understand and know that you're going to pivot, that it's going to change. So starting was huge. That's number one. Number two, once you start, for me, now you're starting to diverge a bit from those that you're normally connected to. So for me, it was mostly coworkers. That was my friends. My friends were mostly my coworkers. Had some friends from growing up, but dispersed around the country, chat here and there, get together once a year and get drunk or whatever. But my friends were my coworkers. So when you talk to coworkers who also have the dream, but they haven't taken that action because they don't know that the thing is going to work out, they're too scared. And you tell them about what you're doing, their inclination is to keep you safe and drag you back into why and sell you on why your life right now is enough. Be good. So finding a group of people, and in my case, I believe in paying for it, it's already there, it's cultivated, it's done. It's the most efficient route. Like, I'm going to join that community. I'm going to spend some money on that because they're all in that room. I don't want to have to go out and find all the people. It takes way too much time. And I'm at a midlife, I'm out of time, right? It's time to make a change and go. The people in that room, I'm going to pay $5, $10, $20,000 to be in that room with them. So second is that you got to find the community that represents future you. I call it imagine when versus remember when. So remember when people are folks in your life that you have right now. All of us have them. I have them still in my life. Remember when people, they know me for who I've always been. So when I diverge from that, they're going to drag me back into, whoa, remember, this is you. Remember this, remember that. The conversations even go that way. Remember when we did this? Remember when we did that? My buddies and I, when we get together, that's the whole thing. We go back to what we used to do in the past. What I needed was imagine when people. We all do. And these are people who don't give a shit about who you've been. They don't know you for who you've been. What they do is they allow you to articulate who you're becoming or who you dream to become, the real dream of who you truly want to become. And then they hold you accountable when you don't act like that person, the future you. They don't care about who you've been. They're only saying, wait a minute, you said you wanted this and you're acting that way. Makes no sense. We got to rein you in, figure out what's going on and push you back in the direction that you told us. So that was number two. One is you got to do something. The second is, or I had to do something. The second is I had to find people that represent who I'm imagining myself to be, that represent future me. You do those two things and I'm convinced it's impossible for you not to make the change, to quit the job, whatever it might be that you're attempting to do. Very quickly, because I know I'm rambling, but even moving down to the Dominican, becoming an expat, that was part and parcel of being in that community. To me, that was crazy. Like looking around the room, can you imagine like moving to the Caribbean? Can you imagine living in the Caribbean and people around you? That'd be crazy. What are you going to do though? Whatever. Then I get around this group of guys who's doing the things I want to do on a day-to-day basis. And it's, oh, you want to move? This guy lives in Spain. This guy lives in Costa Rica. This guy lives in Dominican. This guy lives in Puerto Rico. Oh, this is normal. This is just, okay. It becomes possible. So community is huge.
Yeah. Isn't that the funny thing too, is that you mentioned the living the life in chunks, starting out with the schooling and the career. And that whole time where we're typically taught to limit our expectations on life, right? We're taught that we have limited potential. There's a certain path that we're supposed to go. And if you deviate from that, then that's scary. That's risky. But then when you get around the people who, like you said, the people who are living the life that you want to live, and you're like, wait a minute, there are people that do this stuff. There are people that is the normal, right? And that old life that I thought was normal is actually abnormal now. And that's how you make that growth and that leap. Because when you get around those people and start seeing what's that potential that you thought you had before was limiting, and now you have this new potential that other people have done it helps take away that fear of the unknown, which I think is what stops people a lot. and it helps you overcome that last little 1% hurdle and make that jump. But still, so many people don't do it, right?
Most don't.
They still get to that point, and that fear traps them. And it did for me for years, right? It was similar to you. I worked a long term in a career, about 15 years in a career, doing the stuff that we thought we're told we're supposed to do. And I always had that discontent, right? I always had that discontent, but it was like every time where I thought I was getting to that kind of boiling point, something would happen where it was either a promotion or a raise, and just enough to settle that discontent back down to where, okay, I guess I can manage that. And it wasn't until there was really like a breaking point, and what we talk here about on the Fit Investor as the why, that really pushed me over the edge, which was the birth of my youngest son. And it was that impetus that really pushed me over the edge of what, this just can't happen. Like something needs to change now. It doesn't matter what, something needs to change. And now I need to figure out how, now I need to figure out why, now I need to start surrounding myself and setting up that new identity. And who was that person for you? Like when you said, you know what, I'm not going to be Jamie Gruber, the Progressive Insurance VP anymore. Who was that new identity that you said you were going to grow into?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know if I've ever stated the identity. I stated the vision. The vision was always to travel 3+ months with my family anywhere in the world. That was the outcome that I was seeking, the lifestyle that I wanted to lean into. Identity. So let me unpack that a little bit, because the words like identity, mission, values, they all get mixed in here.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, I would say that my purpose, another word that goes into this sort of soup, my purpose is to inspire and motivate others to live their best life. As I started to make changes, people would ask questions like, oh, this feels really good when I can help others. So my purpose in life, I felt, was to inspire and motivate others to live their best life. As I've gone through this journey and really dissected each element of that, what is my mission? What is my vision? What is my identity? So on and so forth. I really link identity to my true identity is what I was born to do, what I was born for, the purpose I have in life. That's at the end of it, that's my true identity. And my identity is not, my purpose is not to inspire and motivate others to live their best life. That's not a purpose, in my opinion. At least this is my learning. For me, it doesn't mean for everybody. That is a mission, and a mission is derived from purpose. The purpose is higher order, in my opinion. The purpose that I came up with after doing, I do these things called solo weekends. I just go away for a weekend and set an intention and decomp my brain, like just detox my entire brain and try to get clarity, journal out a bunch of stuff and go forward. The purpose that I came up with, what's the word? I'm a little embarrassed about even saying it because it almost sounds narcissistic. The purpose that I came up with is to be seen. That's what at the core of me, it feels like I want to be seen. Doesn't mean look at me, aren't I cool, like me, love me, not that. But in order for me to execute on the mission right now that I have in my life of inspiring, motivate others to live their best life, I need to be seen. And being seen fulfills me. I love getting on a stage. I love getting on a podcast. I love getting on social media, right? Obviously, that it serves my ego, which is okay. It serves others, I hope, which is okay. But being seen is the core of my purpose. So when I think about identity, the identity that I have is linked into that. The identity I guess I have now, if you had to put labels on it, would be something like influencer, because I'm able to be seen and therefore execute on my mission. Right. I use podcaster as an identity because, again, it's a medium that I use right now to execute on being seen and executing my mission by inspiring and motivating others to live their best life. I want to make sure I answer the question pragmatically and practically every day, which is if you had to ask identity, all the things you said at the beginning, father, husband, podcaster, mastermind creator, like those are my identities. But at my core, I went from stay quiet, behind the scenes, don't like, even at work, I'm an energetic guy. When I had my job and I had a big job, like you need to tamp it down a bit, right? You need to play within these walls. You can't go out and ruffle the feathers like you are, like your opinions, keep them to you. That's the opposite of my purpose. And it's why I needed to get out of that. So being seen is my purpose, which allows me, I think, to execute on my identity. And if I had to use words for the identity, it's the ones I just gave you: father, husband, podcaster, influencer.
I like that differential between, purpose and identity there. I haven't quite thought of it that way.
I went through this whole thing. Do you know Benjamin Hardy, the author? I had him on and he was talking about mission and purpose and maybe identity being the same thing. And I said, do you think that? He goes, absolutely. And he goes through this whole thing. And then I did that. I talked about that. And he goes, actually, I think you're right. So I was like, oh, I convinced a friggin' psychologist. Maybe there's something to this thought of teasing it all out. And I don't know if it matters, but to me it matters because as you grow in anything, like you just want to get more and more granular and more into the weeds of like, what is it that works? What is it that doesn't? What's the little, if you're building a platform, a social media platform, like what's working? What's that little thing? Is it the thing I'm saying, the thing I'm wearing, the lighting? Like you got to get that nitty gritty. Mr. Beast does this, like the color on the thumbnail, right? So I look at it the same way as I grow and try to grow and become this future version of me. You have to tease out, in my opinion, very granularly, what is this all for? What am I doing it for? Why am I doing it? All of that. You have to continue to work through that.
And I think that goes back to even what you were talking about before of just taking action to be able to overcome that hurdle. Because I think, again, part of that stopping point beyond the fear and all that stuff is people get caught up in, okay, I need to know for certain who I'm going to be, what I'm going to do. If it's to leave my job or whatever, I got to have it exactly lined out and understand exactly what I'm going to do to make it happen. And it's, when you get into that much detail at that level, you overwhelm yourself. And I think you tap yourself out right from the beginning versus you start out with the overarching theme of, okay, again, just using that example of leaving the job. Okay, I'm going to leave my job. Okay, what do I need to do to be able to do that? Okay, I need to have some type of income. Okay, what do I need to do that? Okay, for me, it was investing in real estate. Okay, well, what type of real estate? Okay, now I can focus on that. And that's the limit of the granularity that I need to get to. And I can just dive in and get to that. Now, once I'm in that world, okay, now we can start diving deeper and deeper into this. And now we can start doing this or that or the other thing.
That's a great point.
So I think it's really important. And I think it goes in also with what I heard. You were talking a recent podcast with Jason Dries as well about keeping your goal. I think it was about the goal, keeping your goal open-ended in a sense, right? And allowing yourself the flexibility to change and pivot as necessary. Because like you said earlier, what you jump into in the beginning, for most people, is probably not going to be what you stick with or only what you stick with, right? Chances are you're going to grow that and develop that and expand upon that. And so for you now in the stage of life that you're at and the stage of your newer entrepreneurial journey and your vision of building this podcast into the Tribe of Millionaires, into this real top media outlet, which I think you're well on your way. What is that open-endedness, if you thought about it, or that flexibility that you're leaving out there for the growth of this outlet, this podcast?
It's funny. It's that it may not be a podcast.
Okay.
In other words, I don't know what the medium was. I guess it was radio, right? So radio was the thing. And then these podcasts came along. I just watched this thing about Howard Stern at one point, like shitting on podcasts. It's probably a decade ago. Like, these are stupid. They're not for real people. They're not for real broadcasters. These are the dumbest things. And anybody with a podcast is an idiot. His tune has changed because he has a podcast, right? Like, it's become the medium. I think, again, going back to the purpose is to be seen, the mission right now, at least is to inspire and motivate others to live their best life. The podcast is the medium. So I like how you put it, like a media company, a media brand. So maybe it's speaking. Maybe it's something we don't even know yet that's going to happen with Google goggles or whatever the hell they're called. I don't know what the medium is. Right now, we know it to be podcasting. And I think there's a long runway with podcasting still, especially in the United States, as baby boomers age out and younger people find the space. So I think podcast is probably the thing, but it's more, I see this medium as my thing, just like I saw my job as a medium to get to a certain level of income. But being too tied to a medium can make you, I don't know, all of a sudden wake up one day and say, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's podcasting. Like, if tomorrow somebody presented me with a different medium by which it aligns and it just lit me up on being seen and being able to inspire and motivate others to live their best life, maybe I'm done with the podcast, or I'm sunsetting it or handing it off to somebody else. So that to me is the open-endedness, that what I do is extremely flexible. I no longer want my identity to be tied up in that, which is why I struggled a bit with the answer, right? Like, I don't want my identity to be, I'm a director at Progressive Insurance, because I was there. I was so there. Like, that was who I was. Somebody mentioned, oh, this guy, he's a big shot at Progressive. Like, I sat up. Like, that was me. It wasn't what I did. It was me.
Right.
So my open-endedness is my identity is not tied to what I do, or I'm trying not to allow it to be tied to what I do. I'm open to whatever the medium is, the what, as long as it serves the why.
I like that. Yeah. Open to the what as long as it serves the why. I think that's so critical because just same thing in the W-2 world as we can get trapped. I think in the entrepreneurial world, we can get trapped all the
Oh,
same. I mean,
I'm there now, honestly. Like I'm married to the businesses I have. Like I'm learning as a newer entrepreneur how to elevate myself out of it. And you talk about work-life balance. I can get into that. Actually, really interesting observation with Grant Cardone on this. But yeah, I'm there. I'm already there now. I love what I'm doing right now. I love all of it. Like I'm doing too many of them because I love all of it. So I like it. I love it. But that doesn't mean that I will in a year or 2 or 5 or 10 years or whatever it might be. So yeah, to your point, absolutely. It's likely if you're going to leave a job in midlife that you're going to simply buy yourself or create for yourself another job. It's unless you're just like this incredible entrepreneur, which you're probably not. If you stayed in a job for 20 years, you're learning how to be an entrepreneur versus this natural entrepreneur. You're likely to be bound by whatever you create to create your own new prison. And I'm in it, but it's a nice prison. I enjoy it.
right? No, that's so true. That's so true. Let's jump into that a little bit then, the work-life balance and everything. And maybe to start that off as a sequitur here of making that transition, especially at the stage that you and I were at when we did, both married with families and long established careers and all that stuff. Yeah, it does take a risk, but it also takes sacrifice. And what was the cost for you? And I'm sure you weighed it, but what was the cost or the sacrifices that you had to make to enable that transition and enable that growth to the point where you can hopefully start working on that balanced life? Does that make sense?
So I want to make sure I'm clear. When you say what were the costs to working on that balanced life, do you mean before I left or as I left? What was the cost of leaving the job?
Yeah.
Or is it more, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it can be both. What was the cost when you made that decision to leave? And during this growth period that I think you're still in a growth period of, again, growing this brand and everything. But what are the sacrifices of being an entrepreneur? Maybe that's a simple way of putting it. What are the sacrifices of being an entrepreneur?
No, I get it. So on the cost, there's a literal cost and then more of a metaphorical cost, if you will. When I left, literally, I had to give back $500,000 in equity. That was a big cost, right? I was an equity level employee. It was unvested. It's not like it came out of my pocket, but it was there. It was in my account, and it would have vested if I stayed till 55. It would vest before that, but it would all vest at 55. It vests in 5-year increments, but I had to give that back. So that's $500,000 that just went away. The metaphorical cost was for the first time going from certainty to uncertainty, truly, meaning my income is not going to be every other Thursday at 6 a.m. I get an email with, oh, there's your paycheck. Taxes are taken out. That's all taken care of for you. So now it's hopefully I make some money this month. If not, hopefully it's a bigger check next month that makes up for this month. And you see you're spending here without money coming in. So that creates physical cost, sleepless nights, uncertainty. Did I make the right move? Am I doing the right thing here? So the stress of that for sure is real. And honestly, I think you just learn over time, not even how to manage the stress, but to look at both sides of that. So, okay, the stress of uncertain income, which I've actually just this year started to structure certain income for myself. But the stress of uncertain income versus the stress of being in a position where if I die tomorrow, I'm going to regret my entire life. Okay, I'll take this one. So you just learn like there's stress no matter what. I'll take this stress. So that's one. The cost of, what was the word that you used for work-life balance? Sacrifice. The sacrifice of work-life balance. This is so interesting. And I'm real-time learning about me and what to do and this, that, and the other. The sacrifices made around work-life balance have been having goals that are too small, therefore creating imbalance. And here's what I mean. I'm going to use Grant Cardone because this is just like front of mind for me right now. So if you're listening and don't know, I just interviewed Grant Cardone in his studio a couple weeks ago. His episode will come out this week, as a matter of fact, as we record this. And Grant Cardone, I know who he is, big name, billionaire, whatever, all that stuff. I also know the other side, scam, fraud, all these things that are said about him. Mm-hmm. So I do a lot of research before an episode with anybody, but especially a guy like him. So I'm digging in and I'm watching this guy across multiple different pieces of content. What is he interviewing people about? What is he being interviewed about? What's he making news about? What's his TV show about? What's this $80 million home he owns in Malibu? And this guy is touring it MTV Cribs style, like everything. Just took it all in. And then I look back at old stuff like 10, 12 years ago and watching him talk about between 07 and 09, when everyone's crashing, he wrote 4 bestsellers. In 2 years, 4 bestsellers. It's like, guy's a unicorn. As I walk into his office, I'm thinking, this guy's a unicorn. What can you learn from? He's just built different, just a different human in that regard. That's my thought. Then I go into his offices And I meet his security guard first at the front gate, like not the gate, but at the front door. And the security guard sounds like Grant Cardone. Sounds, looks, feels. It's wow. This guy's got the same energy, very hospitable, like that Southern sort of charm, almost salesy, but not in a bad way. Like just gregarious, outgoing guy. Brings me into the front desk receptionist. She's similar. We walk through the bullpen of all of his salespeople. There's, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 salespeople on two sides in these like makeshift cubes. They're not like standard cubes, a cool setup. They're all on the phone, two monitors. And as we're walking through, they're popping up and high-fiving. Hey, how you doing? Saying hi to us, like all of them. Fist bumps, the whole night going through, like we're coming out of the tunnel. Then you go into his studio, into his recording studio, and Johnny, the guy there, outgoing, giving, hey, how can we set you up best? Do you need anything up on the screen? Can we do this? How about we film an intro now? Blah, blah, blah. Grant comes in, same thing. And I was like, whoa, okay. This whole place it feels like Grant Cardone. So then I talked to the man, and I'm 22 businesses, 12,000 units of real estate, 7 bestsellers, like all these things that he does, the undercover billionaire show, all of these things that feel like a unicorn. I'm asking him, like, where do you spend your time? He's like, on me. I spend all my time on me. And we're talking through it. And it was just this connection of all three things: the prep, the walking through his business, his office, and then meeting this guy in flesh. Like, he's got 24 hours in a day. He's a guy, right? He's got insecurities. He's not a unicorn. He's just a human being that has allowed himself to dream like a kid and speak that out into the world, where most of us don't allow ourselves that. And what I learned about him is that he has figured out that the best thing that Grant Cardone can do in a given day for him, for his brand, for the world, for his employees, is be Grant Cardone. And then he went out and hired people that understand that all they need to do is make sure that Grant Cardone is Grant Cardone. He's not hiring people. He's not firing people. He's not writing performance evaluations. He's not in the business. He's not. He sits above it, and his ability to walk into a sales meeting for 7 minutes and rile up his people has them fist bumping me when I walk through as some guy they don't know to go interview Grant Cardone, one of God knows how many that come through in a given day.
Mm-hmm.
So his goals are huge. And by setting huge goals, he limits the avenues to get to those goals. When I set goals that are lower, that are achievable, that are like right there, I can do that in one of 50 different ways. And I pursue all 50, therefore creating imbalance with myself, with my family, with everything. I'm all in on work. So now, you mentioned all these things that I'm doing, a production company we just launched. I've got the Emerge community. I've got my podcast. I've got my family. I've got this move down here. I've got this personal brand that's blowing up here in the Dominican, like all these different things that I'm doing. My inclination is I got to put something down in order to achieve balance, when really all I have to do is the opposite. I need to elevate myself. I need to have bigger goals, which then allows me to structure my life in such a way that all of these things are achievable, just not by me. Who's the person? Who's the who? Whatever it might be. So the imbalance for me comes from setting goals that are too low. Always been the case. Big goals require very specific action. There's only 1 or 2 ways to achieve the big goals. There's 50 ways to achieve the goal that's within reach, or that feels a little big, but it's really not. And when there's 50 ways to do something, you do 20 of them and you're burned out. You don't have balance. So that's the best way that I'm learning how to find balance. If that makes sense.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good nugget there. What that makes me think about is, for me personally, in the stage that I'm in too, is, when you set those, like you said, I guess lower bar goals that are achievable. Maybe they're a stretch. They're not too much of a stretch.
You can see many ways to get there.
You can see many ways to get there. And more than likely, there are things that you can probably still do yourself. Right. Whereas
Great point.
Thinking big, you can't get there yourself. You need a team. I think maybe I think that's probably one of the common things in the entrepreneurial journey as well, is we start out in this, lone wolf, I'm going to bootstrap, I'm going to do it, I'm going to wear all the hats. And then you get to a point where, like, this is, like you said, like a new prison that I made myself here, and I'm limiting my potential again until you break out of that. You can set those bigger goals and you can start building a team, working with people, and then you can elevate yourself, just like you were talking about with how Grant does with his team there. I think that's great. That's a great.
Yeah, Benjamin Hardy, we mentioned a minute ago, his book 10X is easier than 2X is a great example of this, where he talks about one of his kids that is a tennis player, loves tennis, wants to go play college tennis. So to go play college tennis is, you got to practice these days, do this, whatever. There's all these different things. And they said, wait a minute, what if you just forget college and aim at being pro? And it was like, we need a pro coach. Simple. That's it. We need a pro coach, right? There's no, oh, if you put in extra hours or network with different schools or send letters. It's not, no, that's when college, which is within reach, it's a stretch. It's not easy to go to be a college tennis player. But when college is the goal, that's like a 2x jump, right? It's a big jump. But the 10x jump has one thing. Right. It's really simple. And it cuts out every other bit of noise that's there for you to achieve that one thing. So imagine applying that to all of your goals for your fitness, for your health. And I've learned that this year. I've hired a trainer finally. I've never done it. Finally hired a trainer. I never understood the value of it until hiring this guy. Like, I don't have to think. I show up. He sets the weight. He tells me what to do. He counts for me, for God's sake. I don't check this between sets. I'm not on my phone between sets. It's just 45 to an hour of straight work. And I'm sore. Done. But I didn't think about it. All I had to do was get out of bed at 5 a.m. and go to the gym and meet him there. That's it. So those who's in that regard, to your point, when you set the big goal, then you need a who. And the challenge can be like, how do I pay the who? And you don't always have to. There's other things we can do with that. But that's a great observation you made. Like when you set them big, it's less what, it's more who.
Yeah. Well, you said it better than I did there, but
I say it in long form. Everything with me is long form. I don't know how I get a 1 minute ever.
Hey guys, it's Brenna Carl, CEO and co-founder of The Mortgage Shop. When I'm not spending my time searching for the best pizza in town, working out, well, because of pizza, or fighting sharks as Kale likes to say, I spend my time educating clients on the best investment products that will help them build generational wealth and making sure their loan process is as smooth as warm butter on a piece of toast. Call us today to get started with your investment journey at 800-816-7982 or, to talk more about pizza. Talk to you soon.
What about with your family? So you made this big move to the Dominican Republic, and I know you're extending your stay there now, which I think is fantastic. That's one of my personal goals, is to move overseas as well. And similar to you, I'm a white guy married to a Latina woman, and so my wife was.
Where are you looking to go? Do you have a place?
For me, I love Colombia. Colombia is my favorite place in the world.
Yeah.
My wife is from Ecuador. She'd probably prefer that a little bit, but
wow, Ecuador is a little tough right now.
Yeah. So maybe that pushes us closer to Colombia.
Yeah.
But so that's been my dream. And that was one of the reasons I structured my business and getting into short-term rentals, which is what I do. Because it was a location independent business that I can make. Because I really want to do that traveling and be able to move overseas. So now, being someone who's done that and is in the middle of that, someone who did it while having young kids. I've got 3 kids, 2 of them similar ages as yours. Looking back now, what were a couple of things that you'd say, you know what, I wish I had known this before doing this, or maybe these are a couple of the things that I would do differently before doing this.
Before making the move. So tactically, I would have moved with kids. I would have moved beginning of summer as opposed to end of summer. We moved 2 weeks before school. So the kids are like thrust into a new country, new environment, new language. And then 2 weeks later, hey, have fun at school. Summer camps are amazing for kids to meet other kids. And then maybe some of those kids go to the same school as them. So I would have done that to integrate the kids better. That's one. 2, I wouldn't have put a year on it. We said we were going to do this for 1 year and then pivoted to more of an indefinite or a second year / indefinite. And that puts a lot of stress on the kids, especially if you have kids that are probably 7 or older. And I'm not saying that only because my kid is, but I've heard that exact same thing from 4 or 5 other parents that did a similar thing that I've met here and in other places, whose kids are 7, 8, 9, 10. When you put a year on it, what the older kid will do is they'll say, I'm not learning the language, or if I do, whatever, I don't need to know it. I'll be home in a year. The first year, our older kid learned it, but he just wouldn't use it unless he absolutely had to. I remember we thinking he's not catching any of it. And then he talked to the housekeeper because he was frustrated that I wasn't doing something for him. He went to the housekeeper and like in full sentences asked her, and she speaks no English, asked her for like scissors and something else. It was like, she looked at me like, whoa, I didn't know he could speak Spanish. Like she's probably asking herself, like, what have I said that he may have understood? But so that's the second thing, is I wouldn't have put a timeline on it. I would have made it an indefinite stay. That's number 2. Beyond that, man, honestly, there's always like little things that you could learn better. We leased a car instead of buying one. I would have bought a car instead of leasing one when we first got here. We thought leasing 1 year. We don't want to own something, be that as it may. Beyond that, though, nothing. Like the timing was when it was right for us. Could have been done sooner. Maybe we could have waited another year if we wanted to. But those are the big things. It was really just really thinking through the kid integration piece. If you're going by yourself, whatever, as adults, but the kids matter. I'll give you this quick thing. The second year, when we decided to stay the second year, our oldest was really resistant. And we were between that whole, look, he's a kid, we're adults, we're going to make a decision for the family. And are we creating distrust with this kid, right? Like by just forcing him to stay here when we did say a year. So I just asked him, like, what are the conditions by which you would stay? And he said, I don't want to go to that school anymore. And we didn't like that first school either. So we wanted to switch him anyway. And I showed him this other school and he thought, like, online, it's a beautiful school. He's, oh, that's pretty cool. And he said, I want to go to the Palladium, one of the resorts, once a month. I'm like, okay, we'll work on that one, but I can switch your school for you. But getting his buy-in was one thing that we did right, I think, in staying indefinitely. And now he's very open to staying. He's in a soccer club and he really enjoys it. So he's very open to staying now.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And how's your Spanish?
I'm good at restaurants. I always say that. I learned situational Spanish. I can go to a restaurant and I sound like I know everything that I'm talking about in Spanish. But outside of that, it's okay. I picked up a little bit. Like the personal trainer I hired, I told him, just speak to me in Spanish. I'll figure it out. I have to figure it out. So I'm trying to get better at it. But most of my day is spent like this. It's in English.
Yeah. And who was the lead driver in terms of the move? Was that you or your wife, or were you both jointly on board with that?
The idea of moving at all, traveling 3+ months with our family anywhere in the world, that was something my wife and I sat down years ago. And we haven't done it in the last couple of years, but we were doing a yearly like dream session, like a dream date. We'd go out on a date, we'd sit down and just talk about what do we want 2022 to look like, 2023. And we'd get really tactical. We do not do this. I don't want to clean the dishes anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. Okay, how much would it be to hire that or whatever? So we'd come up with all these things. And somewhere in one of those years ago, we agreed on, let's 3+ months wherever we want to go thing. So that vision of being able to have location freedom. Mm-hmm. I would say my wife has done it. She lived down here for a year after college. She lived in Italy for a year, picked up Italian. So I think her ability to wander was inspiring to me, and coming up with the vision, obviously it aligned with what she loves to do. But when we actually made the move, when we decided we were going to make the move, I feel like it was almost like in both of our heads. We came down here for a month, January 2022, and we did 2 weeks at our families and then 2 weeks in a resort. And somewhere in there, our kids were playing with their cousins who they did not speak the language at that point, but they're still finding a way to play and communicate and all of that. And we looked at each other at the same time, like, should we do this for a while? Should we just, and she was like, I was thinking the same thing. Maybe this is the spot that we go, 3+ months. And we decided pretty quickly, let's do a year. Let's do 1 year. And then 8 months later we moved, or 7 months later we moved in August. But yeah, it was the vision was hatched a few years ago. And then in the moment, it just felt right to both of us. Just, I don't know, God, whatever, kind of put the same thought in both of our heads.
No, that's great. I like what you said there about your kids getting along with their cousins and stuff. And because isn't that the truth? It's just another thing about limiting beliefs, right? As we grow older, we create these limiting beliefs for ourselves. But when you watch kids, especially young kids, they don't really have them. And whether it's
until we give them to them.
Right, exactly. Whether it's a communication barrier or a skin color thing even, or those things don't exist with little kids. And it reminded me of about a year ago, I took my youngest, who's 4 now, so he was 3 at the time, and we did this 3-week trip through Europe, just he and I. And so we were in, Spain and Gibraltar and Portugal, the Canary Islands. Like it was a really cool trip.
That's amazing.
Remember, we were on the coastline in Portugal and we were just going out to this little beach, and he just starts running towards the water, and there's other little kids around his same age, and they just start playing together. Right? No idea who they are, different language, different culture, different country. That none of that matters. None of that exists in his world, right? It's just, hey, here's another kid. Let's go play. Right? And man, it's convicting to me, because it's like, why do we set these limiting beliefs for ourselves so much? Why do, as we grow older, we create these boundaries, we create these.
Yeah, you said it earlier. It was interesting. I was thinking about this as you said it, that there's a point, we go through these chunks of life in school or whatever, and we just modify or moderate at some point. Mm-hmm. But truthfully, it's probably around age 12. 11. Right now, you're growing a bit, so you're probably not physically able to become the basketball player or the baseball player that you dreamed about when you were a little kid, right? Or your family, your parents are just conditioned, as we all are, to maybe, hey, you know what? Like, we got to start thinking about you going to high school soon or junior high. What might you want to be? What might you want to do? And does it sound reasonable or more reasonable? And as you get older, it's got to sound even more reasonable. So we get conditioned into limitation. And I mentioned about Grant Cardone. I see this with the entrepreneurs I respect in GoBundance, which is I'm a part of that organization, is they act like kids. I don't mean pouting and kicking and like that, but the way they talk, it's when an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old comes up to you and you're like, I'm going to be an astronaut and I'm going to fly to the moon. And you're just like, oh, that's cute. Then you meet some of these guys like a Grant Cardone, like, I'm going to give out $50 million a month. I'm going to do this. He's saying I'm going to be an astronaut and fly to the moon as an 8-year-old. He just never allowed himself to grow out of that. Allowed himself to grow physically and whatever. But like when you're young, you're unlimited. Your possibilities are endless. And some people, him, Gary Vee, the ones that we admire the most probably are the most, visible and present. They never lose that. And for some of us, like me, maybe like you, we have to be shaken or depressed into that mindset again. And even then, like I said before, when I think about my goals in state, I want to be a top 10 podcast, right? That's a goal. That feels so goofy. Oh, that's cute. You want a 45-year-old guy, you want to be the big microphone guy, right? Or you're going to be Joe Rogan. But it feels like that still because I've got all these years of conditioning. But as I meet people now, it's funny to watch reactions like flying back here solo. Oh, are you here visiting friends? No, I live here in DR, and people on a plane always ask this. Oh, what do you do? And I used to be, what sounds practical? I'm a real estate investor. They're like, oh, that makes sense to me. And this discussion over. I've just forced myself to say, I'm a podcaster. And they're like, oh, didn't expect that. What's your podcast? What's the name of it? This, that, and the other. It opens up a whole conversation, but we don't allow ourselves to dream. We get modified down. No fault of my parents or anybody else, our teachers, our guidance counselors, no fault of any of theirs, but they thrust upon us a practicality that they feel is necessary to do. And it makes us stop acting like children when it comes to our beliefs and when it comes to our goals and when it comes to our ambitions. Cardone is a child. He talks like a child in that respect. Gary Vee talks like a child. Ed Milet talks like a child. Patrick Bet-David talks like a child. And they're okay with it because they surround themselves with the kinds of people that allow that child talk. That's my thought.
Do you ever, I know you grew up in Detroit. And
I grew up in New York. I lived in Detroit for a few years. I grew up in New York, Boston, and then Detroit was the last 5 years. Yeah.
Do you ever look back, because I'm sure I grew up in New Hampshire, so small towns and stuff like that. Do you ever look back and just think of not how far you've come in terms of successful or that type of thing, but just look at me, just a random everyday white guy from the small town. And now here you are living in the Dominican Republic, doing all these things. You ever just look back and think that's pretty cool? Who would have thought?
Every day.
Right?
Every day.
Yeah.
Gratitude. I write it down. I think through it all the time. I'm blessed every day. I believe in that every day. I believe in counting those blessings. To be married to my wife, who represented, when I met her, at a point where I was done. Like I was just getting out of a bad relationship. And I remember thinking, it was 20, I'll just be single the rest of my life. If that's what relationships are, screw that. Then I meet my wife and think, if there are women out there like that, if I can get close to that, I'm back in the game. And then to get her, right? Like to get, in my eyes, the GOAT, like I count my blessings for that every day. So yes, I think about it all the time. And I also think about how most of what people would say is like really incredible about what I've accomplished has happened in the last 4 to 5 years. And the only thing that changed in the last 4 to 5 years was the two things we started with. I made a decision and I found a community of people. That's it. Those two things changed in the last 5 years. And from that point forward, everything is different. Everything is different. And it's not better than, it's not cooler than, it's just me. Right. It's who I am. It's aligned with the core essence of what I want from this one life that we have. Whereas before, man, like the idea that I would have left at 65 and at a party, I always play this out, at a graduation party for one of my kids or something, somebody would have said, what did your dad do? Oh, he's retired now, but his life's work was insurance claims. That just saddens me. The idea that could have been, and many people will do that because they're afraid of loss or judgment or whatever at 42 years old by going out on their own or doing whatever it is that aligns with them, another job even that's more aligned with them. But yeah, man, I think about it all the time. I think about where I came from to where I am right now, and it blows my mind.
Yeah. No, I love that. To start wrapping things up here, I wanted to take a little trip down memory lane here. And I wrote this down from one of your earlier podcasts. This is actually before you were a host and everything, but this is back in 2019, you gave out a bucket list. I don't know if you recall, but
scary.
Good stuff. You had 5 things on there. And so going in line with what we were talking about, setting those smaller goals versus now, what kind of goals are you setting? But these were your 5 bucket list items. This was from the end of 2019. It was travel 1 month in Europe, appear in a motion picture, speak in front of 5,000 people, travel with the family for 2 to 3 months out of the year, which you talked about.
Yeah.
Watch a Buffalo Bills game on the sideline with your kids.
I still
So
have a couple of those on there. I haven't done any.
I know you've achieved a couple of those there, but are any of these still like on your radar?
Yeah, the Buffalo Bills thing is, once my kids are interested in it, I'd love to watch a game from the sideline. I have a couple connections I think that can make that happen. So it's like what seemed like, how would I even then? Now it's like, okay, that's doable. Like you said, I probably need to reset the bar on that bucket list. Traveling a month in Europe, we still want to do. In fact, we talked about maybe doing a summer there. We actually found a summer program for our kids that they could go to. You pay one fee, you get a house for the summer for the whole family. It's pretty cool. I forget the name of it, but so doing Europe, maybe a little bit bigger than just a month. I think back then, like the idea of going somewhere for a month was like, holy shit, can you imagine? So maybe more than that. We even talked about, I'd love to move to Switzerland for a while, 6 months a year, whatever, and then navigate Europe from like a home base in Switzerland. I just think it's a cool country. So that's still on there. I can't think of what else I might have updated recently, but that's interesting. What podcast was that I was on when I talked about that?
This was actually the Tribe of Millionaires before you took over.
Oh, no shit. So before I took it. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
With Pat. Yeah. That's hilarious.
So do you still have aspirations of being in a motion picture? Is that still on?
Yeah. So a business partner of mine is a Family Guy writer. He's been a Family Guy writer for 22 years.
Right.
He was a showrunner and all that. And I told him because he wrote the new Naked Gun, which I guess Liam Neeson's going to star in. And it got picked up by whatever production studio. Doesn't mean it'll ever get produced, but it sounds like it'll get there. It's a Seth MacFarlane show that he asked Mark to write, or movie, I should say, that he asked Mark to write. So I just told Mark, listen, man, if you need like a Dr. Evil mixed with mini-me looking dude for anything in that movie, like I'm in. It's funny. Like that one I wrote down is, it'd be nice one day to have it. I haven't really actively pursued it. I probably could become an extra or something in a major motion picture, but we'll see what happens. But that one doesn't move the needle for as much for me as like the Bills game, because I would do that with my boys, and the family trip through Europe, because again, that would be all together. So maybe less selfish than I was back then.
No, that's cool. Yeah, I figured you might enjoy that little trip down memory lane.
That's amazing. Yeah, I got to go back and listen to that. That's funny.
Cool, man. Just at the end, we like to ask our guests to leave our audience with 3 actionable or practical tips based on what we discussed. I know you sprinkled them all throughout, but there are 3 things that you can think of that you'd summarize that you think would be most critical that you'd like to leave our audience with. What would that be?
Yeah, I think number 1, you have to get clarity. So whatever that is for you, write down a vision, make a board, something, but where are you going? It's like what you set the GPS for. So you want to go home. That's clarity. I got to go home. You could set the GPS to get home, but home is the vision. I'm clear on where I want to go. So what is that? What's home? So clarity is 1. Second, I think, is you have to build confidence in a new identity. I truly believe that whatever identity, as we talked about, that you want to become doesn't happen when you have the thing or you're doing the thing. It shifts now, and then the result lags. And the best example of that I could use is being a parent. So when your wife or you, if you're a woman, gets pregnant, like you don't have a kid yet. So if you look at the definition of a parent, the kid's not physically out of the womb. So you're not technically a parent, but your identity is shifted. You're thinking about things differently. You're considering things you've never considered before. You're building nurseries. You're putting together cribs, whatever it is, right? Like your identity is shifted into being a parent the moment your wife or you become pregnant. And then 9 months later, the result lags. You have the identity, what the identity creates for you. So you have to build confidence in your ability to shift. So make that first move like we talked about. And then third is community. So the 3 C's, I call it: clarity, confidence, and then you have to have the right community of people around you that will cultivate that imagine when version of yourself, that future version of you, that only care about holding you accountable to who you're becoming, that don't want to hold you back to align with who you've been. Those are my 3.
Got it. Awesome. Now the final question: what's your favorite type of pizza and from where?
Oh gosh. I've always been a sausage pizza guy. I don't believe that any good pizza exists west of Buffalo or south of maybe Baltimore. Like anything outside of that, it's not pizza. Chicago style, whatever, is not pizza. That's a souffle with like a calzone sort of feature to it. But it's good. It's tasty. Let's not call it pizza. The best pizza I've ever had is in Oneonta, New York at Tino's. It's called a cold cheese slice. So they take like a slice of pizza, could have whatever on it, cheese, pepperoni, whatever. And they just take this giant handful of shredded cold mozzarella cheese and dump it on the hot slice. Then you fold it so some of the outer edges of this pile of cheese kind of melt into it. And the middle of it is this cold cheese. When you're drunk in a college town at 2 a.m, no better pizza slice, man. Cold cheese pizza from Tino's in Oneonta, New York. No doubt.
Pizza. There it is. All right. That's a new one.
I strive to be unique.
Awesome. Thank you again so much, Jamie. Really appreciate your time and sharing your wisdom and your journey with us here on the Fit Investor. And if people want to get in touch with you or follow you or learn more about what you're doing with GoBundance Emerge and everything, what are the best ways to reach out?
Yeah, jump on GoBundanceEmerge.com. You can apply for membership there. If you want to follow me on social, Instagram, I'm most active on @the Jamie Gruber is my Instagram account.
And then, of course, obviously check out the Tribe of Millionaires, subscribe, like it. The awesome guests, awesome interviews on there as well.
I appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Jamie. And we'll see you guys next week on another episode of The Fit Investor.